growing calls for the Southern African Development Community Summit, or SADC for short, to reverse its decision to host the 44th Ordinary Summit in Zimbabwe. A number of Zimbabwean interest groups are pleading with the international community to intervene in what they say are state-sponsored abductions, arrests and killings in that country. Let's get some perspective now, and we're joined by Dr William Mpofu, a political analyst, on the claims by human rights activists and interest groups about the violation of rights in that country. Dr Mpofu, good evening to you, and thank you for your time. Are you able to give us the latest on the ground in Zimbabwe? I know that you're speaking to us from the capital, Tshwane, that's in South Africa, but are you aware of the goings-on in Zimbabwe right now?
Yes, what we can actually observe is that once again, Zimbabwe has become one of Africa's trouble spots, with the abduction of political activists, with the arrests arbitrarily of political opponents of the incumbent regime, and the spreading of fear and the weaponization of state security agents against citizens, which is once again positioning Zimbabwe as a problem spot in the Southern African region.
So let's simply get to grips with this. How strong are these calls, therefore, that the SADC summit should be revisited in terms of its decision to host the 44th Ordinary Summit in Zimbabwe? Is that something that you think could sway the leaders on the region?
Whether this could sway the leaders in the region or not is neither here nor there. But what is palpable is that the calls are strong, they are influential, and they are coming from a genuine positionality where Zimbabweans, activists in the African region, especially the Southern African region, have observed how SADC and the African Union have not come through to protect the people of Zimbabwe from a rogue regime that endures political illegitimacy that dates back to the coup d'etat in 2017, which coup d'etat the SADC looked aside from and sort of politically legitimized and sort of politically endorsed at the dear expense, politically, electorally, and constitutionally, of the long-suffering people of that country, which is Zimbabwe.
Yeah. So, in other words, what I'm reading from your response there is that SADC has not been helpful for a very long time, particularly when it comes to the suffering of the people of that country, whether it be because of the economic situation or indeed the repression, the current leadership's repression. And talking about repression, let's look back at the August 2023 elections. Has anything changed for the better in Zimbabwe since that election?
In fact, things have changed for the West. A SADC entity actually condemned the elections and observed them to be unfree and unfair, but there was no action from the multilateral body to follow up on that illegitimacy, fraudulency, and other faults of the electoral outcome, which was rigged on behalf of the present incumbents. So largely, SADC, the African Union, as multilateral organizations in Africa, have really not stood up for the people of Zimbabwe. But what we have seen is political elites, political leaders in the region coming around to gang up and protect ZANU-PF and its leaders from the political, electoral, and constitutional will of the people of Zimbabwe. So it can be observed that African multilateral institutions have really not stood up for the people of Africa, but have stood by political elites in shape of leaders of declining liberation movements such as ZANU-PF.
Dr. William Mpofu, let's leave the conversation there. Thank you very much for your time and analysis. He is a political analyst.